The E46 M3 subframe reinforcement project continues, and in today's video we're going to be actually welding on the new plates and actually going to reinforce the subframe itself. If you haven't seen part 1 of this entire series where I grind down the surface area, remove the subframe, and prep everything for welding for today's video, you can find the link to that video in the description below. And without further ado, let's actually reinforce my subframe and get to welding. Welcome back to Yev's Build. So our boy Daniel, if you don't know, he has some crazy projects going on. He's gonna be welding my subframe. The day he decides to bring his gear, we get a power outage. In the last 5 years that we've been living here, never had a power outage. Whoever's gonna be doing this probably already knows all this, but what's some of the tips you want to give?
Mainly take your time, but make sure everything's nice and clean and prepped. You want to get as much clean metal as you can, obviously. Give yourself a lot of room, otherwise you'll start burning into this and then your welds will start spinning. Prep your pieces, both pieces, because obviously you're welding one onto the other, so you want to make sure they're both clean and ready to go. That's about it. And again, take your time. I'm over here doing like this, putting it on the wrong way.
Make sure it's facing the right way. Yeah, that's that way. Yeah.
See, take your time. Make sure to like and subscribe. Oh, that was a fail. Make sure to like and subscribe. Don't worry, that one was just to hold it.
So the point of that is just to tack it in, make sure that it's holding in place so that you wouldn't have to hold the entire time, and there you go, dude.
So right here, I went and did the weld. Another thing to look out for right there is I went over a little here, got this area a little too hot, and it blew through. Be aware of what you're welding onto. When you're welding thicker metal like this onto thinner metal, try to move the weld puddle onto it, kind of like that. It'll prevent that from happening. That way you get the nice penetration and the hold without all the heat going to the inner panel.
So now the main point of this, why we cut this out anyway, is because you see there's 2 factory layers of sheet metal that were terribly welded together. What we're going to be doing is going to be reinforcing them and welding them to themselves. And then we're going to block off this plate and weld it back on, and that's literally it. Obviously, once you get some sort of welds in, give it a little coat of primer, and then we're gonna be welding on the actual square pieces itself. Well, as you can see, all 4 plates are now welded. Dude, I'm so happy with Daniel. Unfortunately, this is the next day and I could not properly introduce you to him because he had to go, and we finished up at around 1 in the morning on a Thursday, so. But dude, check this dude out. I'm gonna link his Instagram because dude, this dude is a master, he's a perfectionist, and he does things so well. If you don't already know about Daniel, I'd just like to say a huge thank you and huge shout out to Daniel, dude. He's my homie for years and years, and he has a dope Z Datsun that he's rebuilding and restoring, and also he's gonna swap a V8 into it. Most likely an LS. Check this dude out, dude, because he did a great job with these welds, and I'm super happy with this. So after everything's welded, what we're gonna do is take a grinder and pretty much just kind of flatten all these welds up just ever so slightly. Not entirely flat with the entire surface of the plate, but just a little bit enough to where it's a little bit more flat, not as rounded and not as bubbly in certain areas, because some of them like this, see what I mean, there's like a pointy spot. We gotta grind this down a little bit. So you take the same grinder tool, grind it down. We're gonna later prime it and then put seam sealer around everywhere where we welded, and then we're gonna give it a layer of paint over all this, and pretty much the reassembly begins after that shortly. The entire purpose of this is that we're reinforcing the structure around the mounting points of the subframe. If you don't know already, the sheet metal around these E46s and the mounting points, they're very thin and very fragile, so over time, typically these mounting points right here, the metal, the sheet metal starts to crack. Here's the thing, what we did is we reinforced this entire structure. We put more metal, we put more thicker material all around where the mounting points are. That way it's reinforced and there's not as much bendage, and everything is just kind of sitting together more nicer and tighter. So that's the entire purpose of this entire thing. But notice, keep in mind, you see these two little studs, this is on the passenger rear. We didn't weld around these just because it might have warped the actual stud, and we don't want that. We also didn't weld around the actual mounting points where the bolts go through, just because, again, we don't want this to collapse. We don't want the hole to collapse. We don't want anything to go wrong inside. So we didn't weld around here. As you can see, all 4 points. where the bolts go through are not welded, but make sure it's centered when we do so. And after everything's grinded down, pretty much what you want to do is you kind of want to flatten up these spots, especially where, you know, the mounting of the bolts are going to be. You don't want this part to be sticking out more than the actual seating position of the bolt. Flatten it down just ever so slightly. Don't get it down completely to where the welds don't make a difference of being there anymore. Grind all the sharp edges down, and then we're going to give it a layer of primer. I had this stuff laying around. I've used this on some metal before, and it seems to be working real good, so I'm going to give it a layer of this all around. Make sure it covers everything that was ever exposed, all the metal that was exposed, and grind it down. Cover it all up and wait for it to dry, dude. So then, to seal everything up, every weld spot that we've made with seam sealer, you get this black seam sealer right here. It's directly for metal. You can paint over it almost immediately, and you're gonna need a caulking gun. You get it on there, you can smear it up all the way, and you make sure it goes into every little hole and crevice, and you let it dry for just a little bit, and we're gonna paint over it, and that's gonna be pretty much it for the entire subframe reinforcement procedure. And here we have it, ladies and gentlemen, dude. The plates are now seam sealed completely. All four, well actually 6 I guess, and then the ones up top in the trunk. Everything's seam sealed. The exact same method that we're doing here, we're doing up in the trunk. So you seam seal it, wait for it to dry a little bit, and then we're gonna add a coat, maybe 2 coats of paint. And dude, pretty much assembly is right around the corner, dude. I'm excited. Alright, well then after it's seam sealed and everything's relatively dry, I'm using this stuff right here. Apparently it's some good stuff. It's pretty expensive, but it adds texture, and it's nice. It's cool stuff. Let's do it. Do the rest. So let that coat dry and add another coat just as a precaution.